So my goal here is to give businesses a voice, a platform where they can talk about their businesses, about what they're doing differently at a time like this. It's things have changed. Things have changed in their businesses. I want to know what that is, if it's anything. And today I'm really, really excited to speak to Adam Shee. He has been with HP Law for about 10 years now and in the North Burnaby area. And he's been absolutely amazing. I mean, quick to respond. Any questions that I would have about real estate or anything specific, Adam's been really great to talk to me, to my clients, my friends. So he's been a real great partner in my business and just somebody that I can really rely on for information and any questions that I have. So Adam, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are being a lawyer. And why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a background about what you do and what you specialize in?
Sure, thanks. So I am a lawyer, as you mentioned. We practice in the North Burnaby area. We're right across from Brentwood Mall. My primary area of practice is civil litigation, so that involves family law cases, commercial disputes in some instances, a little bit of personal injury law, although as I mentioned earlier to you, that is declining with some of the steps that the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia is taking to eliminate the rights of victims in car accidents to compensation. But there's still a little bit of that, and other areas of personal injury like slip and falls are not going anywhere either. We also do quite a bit of estate work here. I do wills and estate planning generally, as do all the other lawyers in the office. We have a fairly large corporate segment to our work as well. 3 lawyers who do primarily corporate work here, so that's a big part of it. And as you mentioned, we do real estate conveyancing here a lot as well. Yeah, I think pretty much all of the lawyers here do a little bit of that. So yeah, we're pretty much a full service type of firm. The one area we don't do a lot of work in is criminal law, but even that's changing a little bit. We have a student who is interested in that, and so that may be an area that we start to grow in as well.
Fantastic, and those are all great services, and I know you and I've been in contact throughout the years on real estate quite a bit, but there's other things as well. So I'm really excited. And now during this COVID thing, this big topic, what is HP doing differently now that they were doing pre-COVID? What are they doing differently? How are they protecting their clients? Obviously, things need to be signed in person and so forth. So let's touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, like everyone else, we're trying to do as much remote work as possible. So staff usually come in a limited number of times per week. We're open right now for client meetings only 3 days a week and with limited hours. So we're basically here from 11 to 2 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And what we do in that time is we'll schedule appointments that we actually have to have in-person meetings with clients about. So signing documents, for example, with new clients, verifying their identification, that type of thing. We have a fairly large notarial sort of work pool as well, I guess, and a large number of clients that come in fairly regularly to get documents notarized. A lot of builders who want to get statutory declarations done. For builders, liens will come in regularly, so they're now all aware that those are the hours that we're open for that. So that's what we're doing pretty much on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We can schedule appointments on other days if it's absolutely essential and a client can't make it at any other time for signing documents. But when they do come in, we're now only taking meetings with clients in our boardroom where we can actually stay 6 feet apart from them. We're generally washing down our tables and chairs fairly regularly, asking clients to bring their own pens when they sign documents. Little things like that. We have hand sanitizer at the front desk that we never had before. So little things that probably every business is doing, and other things that are more specific to our business, such as meeting clients only when it's absolutely necessary in person.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And it's great that you are taking the precautions, making sure that everybody's safe, and your lawyers as well, and your staff. So that's really important to take those measures. Are you finding with conveyance in terms of real estate, has that declined, or is there less people completing on properties? Is there any issues with completions right now, with maybe potentially lost job losses or anything like that? Are you finding any issues right now, or is it kind of business as usual?
It's been business as usual so far, but there's probably a caveat to that in the sense that a lot of the deals that are closing now were entered into long before we went into this phase of lockdown. And so I think a lot of people aren't too interested in jumping out of contracts without knowing where this is going. We may see more of that where people are billing out on deals if this goes on this longer, and people don't have the ability to complete. That's something that I thought might happen. It hasn't happened yet. I have had one client call me and ask about what his options were in terms of not completing because of concerns about the ability to actually complete financially. But I haven't seen it yet. And in terms of the drop off, again, in just the general volume of work in that area, we haven't seen it yet. But I expect it will come when I see things like figures from Toronto of 70% declines in real estate activity in just the month of April. I expect we'll see it here at some point. Hopefully it won't be as significant here because we're doing better than a lot of other places, but everybody's being affected, and I can't see people being able to be as active in the real estate market for a while. But I'm hoping I'm wrong on that. But so far we haven't seen it, and we haven't seen a significant number of people trying to avoid completing, which is a good thing.
That is a great thing, and it's really nice to hear from a real estate standpoint as well from your side, because we are seeing activity. I mean, people that need to buy, they're buying. People that need to sell are selling. So we are definitely seeing activity on a much softer level, but we are. So it's really nice to see that a lot of people aren't discouraged. There's a lot of people that do have job security in essential businesses and so forth. So it's good.
And we have a lot of estates too, where the main asset of the estate will be a piece of real estate and real property. So it will be in everyone's interest to get it listed for sale as quickly as possible. Now it may sit on the market longer in these circumstances, but the sale volumes are in those types of situations are not going to go down when someone dies and no one's living in a property. The beneficiaries usually want to sell the property as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. And showing it is not a problem because it's vacant and so forth, just with proper measures, of course. And I know that you wanted to touch on different methods of executing legal documents. Explain that to me. I would love to know a little bit more about that. That was something that, was is an interesting topic as well.
Yeah, I can go into that a little bit. The courts in British Columbia have adopted several new guidelines in terms of executing, for example, affidavits, and there are a number of options besides the typical in-person witnessing the execution of documents. It would probably be a little bit more complicated to go into than we would have time to, but there is a tendency towards more flexibility there. So we have options in terms of executing documents by non-traditional means, including video conferencing. There are a huge number of formalities that have to be complied with in that regard. And my experience tells me that most clients will probably rather come in to sign them in person anyway, just because of the inconvenience and the time involved in executing a document in that manner. There are not as many different ways to execute, for example, land title documents, and the flexibility isn't really there with, for example, Form A transfers and Form B mortgages and the other types of documents that need to be filed. But for our signature on them, in terms of actually filing them, electronic signatures have been used by the Land Title Office for years in any case. So it's really the client's signature that the flexibility isn't there with just yet.
No, that's great. That's great. And I did want to quickly touch on not a sexy topic, but wills and power of attorney and so forth. And I've always advised, not that I'm a lawyer, but I've always suggested to clients that it's always important to think about that. Having a will in place, having a power of attorney, having all those documents in place, no matter when it is, pre-COVID, post-COVID, during, it doesn't matter. Can you please speak to that? Because I just think it's such an important topic, even though it's not a fun topic, it's not a sexy topic, but it's an important topic.
Yeah, well, with respect to powers of attorney, it's really important if you own real estate to have a power of attorney in place, because if something happens to an individual who is no longer able to manage their own affairs, and for example, their only source of revenue or money is a property to pay for care, for example, if someone has to go into a care home, then the only way to get money out of that property is to either sell it or remortgage it. And that can't be done unless a power of attorney has been granted to somebody who has the ability to do that on the person's behalf. Short of another person making a court application for what we call an order appointing them a committee of the person, which is like a court-ordered power of attorney. The difference between a court-ordered power of attorney and a power of attorney that you might come to a lawyer's office to execute, though, is significant in that the cost of coming to a lawyer's office to execute a power of attorney can be a couple of $100 versus someone going to court to obtain control of your affairs that way, costing several $1,000s. And maybe more if it becomes a contested application, because the requirements for getting that type of order are quite strict. Whereas if you donate them voluntarily through a power of attorney, it's a really inexpensive and simple process. So it's a really good thing to do if you own real estate. But generally, if you don't have anyone else who has the ability to access funds on your behalf, if you can't manage things for yourself, power of attorney is really an indispensable thing. And a lot of people don't understand that. People are a little bit clearer on what the importance of a will is. A lot of people don't like to do it because it reminds them obviously of their own mortality. But it is an important thing to have in place to make sure that the people you care about are taken care of. And even in the case of someone who doesn't have a family, I myself am single with no children, but there's an importance still to doing a will, just because there are probably people who would inherit my estate without a will that I wouldn't want to, or people that I would prefer to see inherit my estate if something were to happen to me than other people. So, you know, if you're in my situation, there are a number of family members who would inherit all of my estate based on the succession rules set out in the Wills and Estates and Succession Act. And if someone, for example, is in their 80s with no children, no spouse, their parents have long since predeceased them, then their estate probably is going to end up being distributed amongst any living uncles and aunts or living first cousins if they don't have siblings who are alive. If they don't get along equally with all of those cousins, or they have cousins who don't really need to share in the estate will still be distributed to those people. So even from that standpoint, it's an important document to have, particularly if there are people that you would like to help out as sort of a legacy. So it is an important document, even when people sometimes think that it's not, because there's, you know, I don't have children, for example, I don't need to worry about that, or, you know, my spouse doesn't predeceased me, or I've never been married, so, you know, I don't care where my money goes. If you really think about it, and when people come to my office and I tell them where it will go, then a lot of times they do care where it ends up. So it is important to do wills beyond just the obvious, so you want to take care of immediate family members and the like.
And I think I did my will, and it was a really interesting experience in general, just to really look at everything that you've been working towards, everything that you currently have, and the people in your life. And it was just a real eye-opener in general, just as an amazing practice. I think it's really important to just look at the questionnaires and just really think about it and sit back and think about it. It was an amazing experience because you never really get a chance to do that. We're so focused on moving forward, doing what we need to do day to day, that we don't really sit and reflect and think about the people in our lives, like you mentioned, that might require that or could use it. and just really the assets that we have, and really analyze that and be like, okay, who's my executor, who's going to take care of that. And I did my POA at the time as well. And now on that topic, on the power of attorney, from my understanding, there is two different ones. I've had a client that thought they had a power of attorney, but it was only for medical decisions, but it wasn't an actual power of attorney. So they were confused, and then we had to obviously get that redone correctly to be able to sell a piece of property. Can you speak to the differences to that?
Right. What you're talking about is what would be called in British Columbia a representation agreement. In some other jurisdictions, they call it a health power of attorney. I think Ontario is called that. But it effectively appoints someone. There are two versions of it. One can appoint somebody to make simply health and personal care decisions, and the other one can appoint someone to make those decisions, plus some low-level financial day-to-day decisions like management of money and the like, but it wouldn't have the same effect and the same coverage in terms of decision-making authority as a power of attorney that's done under the Power of Attorney Act. But the main difference is what the purpose of it is for. A power of attorney under the Power of Attorney Act generally will cover all legal and financial decisions that an individual could make for themselves. And a representation agreement, more often than not, is confined to health and personal care decisions. Although, as I said, in some instances, it can also be used to make day-to-day minor financial decisions on behalf of a person.
And that's great. And thank you so much for speaking to that, because I think it's an important distinction, because a lot of people don't know that. They think, oh, I have a representative agreement. I can represent my mom or my father. However, it's not the same. So I know that I always check it, and I always check it with a lawyer or notary, just because it's important to be like, hey, am I looking at the right document? Are they able to sell a piece of property and deal with financial situations?
And the other difference would be specifically that a representation agreement typically can't be filed in the land title office to authorize somebody to sell property, whereas a power of attorney, if it's done properly and it complies with the formalities required under the Land Title Act, can be registered to enable somebody to sign a real estate transfer or a mortgage or any other land title instrument.
Fantastic. No, that's so great. Is there any advice you have for, except getting a will, getting a power of attorney? Is there anything else you could tell the audience moving forward? Any advice you can give them right now to walk away with?
Well, I mean, the only advice I would give you is not to assume that legal rights at this point in time are suspended just because of everything that's going on, and that you can wait to enforce those rights. So if somebody owes you money, it may be a little bit harder to collect it right now through the courts because the courts are effectively shut down. But there are other steps that you can take to protect rights, on an ongoing basis. You can send demand letters out. There are still things that can be done to assist people in enforcing these types of rights. It is a little bit more difficult, and the courts are slowly but surely opening up. So while they were shut down almost completely for the last 5 weeks, I know the Court of Appeal now is basically resuming ordinary hearings just through video conferencing. The Supreme Court is going beyond just what they were hearing over the past 5 weeks, being urgent applications. Now they're hearing other applications that have been scheduled for the period during which they were shut down, again, by video conferencing. And hopefully they'll expand these services more and more as we go on. But yeah, I would recommend that people not leave any legal issues they have outstanding, because you are still potentially prejudicing yourself by not trying to enforce them, even if it's not easy to do it through court processes at the present time.
And that's awesome advice. Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you so much for being on here. I know you have a really busy schedule, so I don't want to take too much of your time. I do have one more question.
Sure.
Personally, what are the 3 things you're grateful for right now?
I'm grateful that I still have a job, that I have income coming in. Work has slowed down for sure, but we are still, all of us in this office, in a much less precarious position economically than a lot of people are right now. I am grateful for family that I have that stay in touch regularly. And grateful to all of the people who are making our lives a whole lot easier right now by making sure that stores are as stocked as they can possibly be, and for healthcare workers who have done an enormously difficult job, and have, at least in this province, kept this thing under what appears to be control, relatively speaking, so that if any of us do get sick with something else, we don't have to worry too much about getting reasonably good treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And yes, thank you so much to the frontline workers and the nurses and everybody that's there for us. We really appreciate it and appreciate your service. I mean, it's absolutely necessary, and it's great to have you in my corner. I know how grateful I am to be able to rely on you for any questions that I may have. So if I haven't said thank you, I do want to say it here. So I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for speaking on these really important topics as well. I think it's going to be a valuable insight for a lot of people. So I really, really appreciate your time, Adam.
No problem at all. My pleasure, and my pleasure working with you.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, well, have a great day, and stay healthy and stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe.
Thanks.